Hi, everybody. My name is Charlene Henry. I'm the staff assistant.
Hi, I'm Shannon Pear, and I'm the Operations Systems Specialist.
Hello, everyone. This is Stella Jones. I'm the program coordinator.
And so you probably have been in touch with some of us, most of us, and Charlene is the person who has made sure that you had the information about this webinar, and Shannon, Stella, and I will all be sharing information with you. And we are, if you haven't already been muted, we're going to mute you so that there won't be any background noise while the presentation is going on. And if you have an urgent question, please feel free to type it in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll pause a couple of times to take questions. Typically, we cover most things that you might want to ask, maybe just not in the order you're expecting. So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the American Cancer Society, but I think a little bit of context is always helpful. We're the largest private non-for-profit funder of cancer research and training in the U.S. So what that means is that NIH has a bit more money because we can't collect taxes, and pharmaceutical companies do a lot of cancer research, and nobody really knows what they spend. But in our neighborhood of nonprofit funders, we're number one, and would love to stay there. We've been doing this for a really long time and invested almost $5 billion in research and training, and we feel like we have a pretty impressive track record in that 47 of our funded researchers have received a Nobel Prize, and perhaps you're the next. I'd like to think that. We have a couple of really broad mandates. Oh, goodness. Since the mid-1990s, I believe our focus has been on beginning investigators. We also do not prescribe the areas of research that you submit.
86072904226 is not available. At the
Okay, so Alexa is in our phone, I think. So we don't prescribe the areas of research except that you need to be doing cancer research, but we really look for the best ideas to come from the scientific community. We have a number of programs, and we try very hard to balance the research across the entire continuum. We've had a long-standing funding on health disparities reduction. And, of course, we fund training grants for health professionals, and that's why you're on the phone, I know. And so I was mentioning that we have a number of programs, and so the 5 to the left of the slide are the areas of research for people who are beyond their training, beyond their terminal degree. The main purpose for me to show you this slide is just so you can see that there's one committee that reviews the scholarships in cancer nursing, and they are all oncology nurse scientists with expertise across a range of different topics. The other programs are all grouped by topic, and they review a number of different mechanisms. So just, quickly, you can see we fund from the very fundamental molecular and genetic level all the way through translational research to population, health policy, health services research. And those abbreviations at the bottom of the screen, like SCN, which stands for Scholarships in Cancer Nursing Peer Review Committee, are all the various committees that we have and that do all the hard work of reviewing the 1,500 or so grant applications that we get each year. And to health professional training grants is that area under the blue umbrella, and we fund master's and doctoral students in nursing and social work and residents in preventive medicine interested in cancer prevention and control practice. And really what we want to do is facilitate the application of research findings in the area of cancer prevention and control by making sure we're putting lots of really good people out on the street, essentially, who have expertise and commitment to this field. So that's the preamble and background. I know what you really want to hear about are these doctoral degree scholarships. And I'm not going to read the slides to you. I think you know that they're intended to support people who are in their doctoral program. An important thing to know is that you need to be a licensed RN when you apply. You do not have to be a United States citizen or permanent resident. That was a previous requirement. But if you're here on a visa, you have to be here on a visa that's going to allow you to finish your program. We don't want to fund somebody who has to leave in the middle. The institution where you do your doctorate has to be accredited and able to award a PhD. It also has to be a nonprofit program. So I know that there are a few for-profit nursing schools out there, not too many, but we cannot fund a for-profit entity. That's across the board. And the other thing that I guess is important to understand about this program is that you can get up to 4 years of support. You have to submit a non-competing renewal application, which means that you're not competing with everybody who's coming in for the first time. You're essentially being reviewed on your progress, and there's an up or down vote. Another point I should have mentioned a moment ago, I was talking about the institution, is that if you're not in an on-campus program, we're going to ask for more information about the kind of program that you're in. If your institution has a distance program but you're not in it, you don't need to check that box or tell us about it. And that was a source of a little bit of confusion. Last year, a couple of people who were at an institution that has both checked distance, and we were trying to understand how they were participating from a distance since they lived nearby. So just be aware that you only need to tell us about a non-bricks-and-mortar program if you're in one. And something you should also know up front is that $15,000 a year is very, very flexible. So you're not going to find a budget page in this application. And you may use the money however you need to support your doctoral studies. A lot of people will apply that to tuition or related educational expenses. But if you need to pay rent or your phone bill, and maybe it's because you cut back on some hours at work in order to get through your program, that's fine with us. So these are the sections of the application, and I'm going to go through them each in a little bit of detail. When the reviewers are looking at your application, they're considering all of these things in the context of the combined strength of your qualifications and experience, the program of study that's being proposed, and the faculty and the resources that are available to you. Each of these sections has detailed review criteria, and you can see those. They're included in the application instructions as Appendix D, so you can be aware of just how much detail is expected and what sorts of things you need to make sure you include or comment on. One thing to be aware of is that in the research plan, but certainly throughout the application, the reviewers are going to consider spelling and grammar as part of their evaluation. And so please make sure that you have somebody proofread it for you, because that's a real distraction, and I think it undermines your credibility as a scientist. So biographical information is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to want to know that you have been accepted, or when you enrolled, what % of your program has been completed, what your GPA is. If you are in the process of applying, it's highly unlikely that the school is going to be willing to support your application because you're not officially a student, so you need to wait until you've been accepted to submit an application. Relevant professional experience means, of course, cancer nursing, but also other areas of oncology. So oncology social work, oncology research coordinator. You may have a nursing background, or not have a nursing background, but have been working in another area of oncology, or another area that relates to your area of interest, but is not necessarily oncology. So they're going to be looking to see what your oncology experience has been and related experience. Being active in professional organizations is important, particularly if you've held any leadership positions or have been active for a very long time. You know, if it looks like you've just dropped into something, that would be perhaps less impressive to the reviewers. And also, service activities are important in the same way. So, again, they're going to be looking to see if you've been involved in something for a sustained period of time, or have been taking progressively more demanding roles as a leadership. And the other thing that is included in your biographical information are recommendations from people who know you well and are in a position to assess your academic abilities and your potential for a career as a cancer nurse scientist. The letters of recommendation, they're really not letters, they're forms. And there's a number of areas where they're asked to sort of rate your qualifications as a researcher. And then there's a narrative. And those forms are also, examples are provided in the materials so you can see and perhaps maybe even show it to your recommender. It's always a good idea to ask somebody who's providing a recommendation, A, if they're willing to do it, and B, you know, can they work with the format provided? And they will be submitting those blindly, and so you won't be able to see what they've done. So it's a good idea to sort of prep them by showing them what's expected. And they're going to need to upload it to Proposal Central, so you may need to do a little bit of hand-holding. But keep in mind that, you know, and this is kind of facetious, but you don't want to ask your best friend to provide this recommendation. You want somebody who can really tell you that, who can really attest to the fact that you can be successful in this program and in a research career. Under professional contributions, the reviewers will consider how long it's been since you've completed your undergraduate or entry-level master's degree in nursing and related to your area of study. So if you have presentations or manuscripts or other kinds of materials, those will be important to highlight. If you have been involved in research, they're going to want to know more about that and what your role has been. And if you've had any honors. So a lot of people will be applying able to point to Sigma Theta Tau membership, any academic scholarships, any work-related scholarship recognitions, those kinds of things. And then lastly, you're going to be asked to talk about your professional goals. So all of those other things kind of need to come together in an integrated statement about what your past experience has been, what really has sparked passion in you, and what you want to do now, and how this scholarship is going to help you. So they really want to see that you thought this through, and you know, oftentimes people will talk about a personal experience with a family member who's been diagnosed with cancer, or how in their clinical practice they observed something, either a medical issue or a issue that kind of needs to be solved to assist patients in getting better faster, those sorts of things. So all of that is valid information. You don't need to share private information, but it's okay to make this personal so people understand, what has brought you to this point. I'm going to just very quickly answer these couple of questions. The recommenders will get instructions. You will essentially provide their email address, and it will all be sent to them. And uploading is just like you upload anywhere else. So if they're capable of uploading, they will have complete instructions about how to get into Proposal Central and do it. The letters of recommendation just have to be from people who can meet those requirements that I mentioned. They have to know that you're capable of doing this academic work and pursuing a doctoral degree that will allow you to become an independent scientist. So it could be a physician, it could be somebody with a PhD, sometimes it's faculty, or if you've been working with somebody in a research project, it doesn't really matter whether they're a nurse, just as long as they're in a position to comment appropriately. When you see that form, you'll see what they need to be able to talk about. And if the person you have in mind is not able to address your facility in doing research, then they're probably not a good choice. The next section of the application is where you need to talk about your doctoral program. And so they'll want to understand why you picked this program and probably, proximity, the faculty who are there and the research that they're doing, their track record, etc., their resources. They're going to want to understand what coursework you've completed or you plan to take that's relevant to your research, and any other content that you may be accessing. And your advisor is also going to be asked to talk about this somewhat. So they're going to want to see concurrence between the two sections. And then naturally they're going to look to see whether all these things fit together. So if you're interested in a particular kind of research but there's nobody at the university where you've been accepted doing that, then they may not consider it to be a very good fit. And obviously I'm using really basic examples, but that's really the bottom line. So here's where you're probably going to do the most work. Everybody who is applying, regardless of where they are in their program, needs to provide a research plan, but the outline is tailored to where you are in the program. So we very cleverly call them Research Plan A and Research Plan B. If you're doing an A, you're probably a first or second year PhD student. You may be starting to work on your proposal depending on where you are, what you've done in your coursework, but your dissertation is really in the very, very early stages. What you have to be able to do is describe your topic of interest. So whatever it is you said your passion was and what you want to go to school for and what you want to do research on, that's what you're going to be talking about here. You also need to be able to do a robust literature search. So even if this ends up not being your specific topic or it changes a little, the reviewers are still going to want to be able to see that you can get into the literature, find all the relevant articles on the topic, analyze the gaps. You don't want to study a topic that everybody has studied to death and there's no real need. And be able to describe how your research would contribute to cancer nursing and to the health of persons with cancer or those at risk for cancer. You're going to be asked to identify milestones in your program. These may well change, but they really want to understand that you're projecting something that's feasible. So if you plan to be on the 8-year plan, they may not be so excited, and you think you're going to get done in a year and a half, and they may question that also. So there's a separate form where you indicate you've completed coursework, you've been accepted to candidacy, you've taken your comps if that's what you're doing. If you're doing the 3-paper option, you can adjust the timeline to reflect that versus a dissertation, defense, etc. And again, if you haven't seen this in the application yet, you'll understand when you do see it. If you are further along, so finished with your coursework, maybe in the 3rd or 4th year of your program, you're going to be completing Research Plan B. So that means that you've probably drafted your dissertation proposal, or it's about to be drafted, or if it's even further along. You may have already defended your proposal. As I said, people come into the scholarship at all phases of their program. But what you're going to need to do in addition to what the Research Plan A calls for is include hypotheses and aims. They're going to want to understand your methodology. They're really going to be looking for a dissertation committee at this point as opposed to who is available to work with you, as you might have described as in a Research Plan A. I think both of these have page limits. I think it's a little bit longer for B. And I only mention that because references are not included, but we do ask that you cite them in the National Library of Medicine ICMJE recommendations format. And there is a hyperlink in the materials. You can easily find it. I had to go hunting for it this year because ICMJE changed. But that's the preferred format for our reviewers. We also ask that at the front end of the research plan, you explicitly tell us how long before you expect to submit your dissertation proposal for review. So give us a month and a year, because the reviewers are going to consider that when they review your choice of research plan. Somebody who seems like they should be able to be submitting a research plan B, but is putting in a research plan A, the reviewers are going to kind of wonder why that's happening. So you need to be able to demonstrate that your research plan is really consistent with where you are in your progress toward beginning your dissertation research. And if you have any questions, certainly get in touch with me and we can think it through. The other point here is that among the resources that you'll be describing, there's an additional request for people who are in distance learning programs. So we suggest that you identify people in your employing institution, your community, who can support you. They might be serving as adjunct faculty or members of your dissertation committee and helping you move your studies forward. So if you are in a distance program and you're working maybe in a cancer center, your distance mentor might be somebody who's able to give you access to patients if you're doing that kind of a study. And that person also needs to provide a letter of support. The second half of the application is titled Program Advisor Information, and either your advisor will complete this or you and your advisor will complete this. Parts of it absolutely have to be completed by your advisor. And really, it's how your advisor is agreeing to work with you. So they're going to want to see evidence of educational and research experience in your training plan, classes, seminars, other opportunities. They're going to consider the qualifications of your faculty advisor or dissertation chair to be mentoring you. And again, the mentor is going to need to describe who they have currently or previously mentored and where those people are now, their ongoing research and whether it's relevant to what you're doing, and then whether they're really committed to you and how available they are, how often you'll be meeting, or whether you're going to be able to catch them by email all the time. Those kinds of things all bolster your mentor's commitment. Oh, and we also ask the mentor to actually recommend you. So they don't submit a recommendation form. the two forms have to come from other people because there's a section within this part of the application where your advisor or dissertation chair has the opportunity to recommend you. And then, of course, we're looking for a biographical sketch. One other point is that depending on where you are in your program, you may have an advisor or a dissertation chair. And if you have both, we need both. So if you have a faculty advisor and you're moving to a dissertation chair, it never hurts to give us both. So that's all the content in the application. So easy peasy, right? Just so you understand that when your application comes in October, it's going to be reviewed in January, and then a second level of review occurs in March. Our council is the group that has the hard job of looking across all these committees and deciding who's going to get funded. And so there's a lot of moving parts, I suppose. Many of the people on council were chairs of the prior chairs of peer review committees, such as the chair of the Scholarships and Cancer Nursing Committee. Also on the council and on all the peer review committees are what we call stakeholders. So other organizations call them consumer advocates or patient advocates, etc. They've been participating for a really long time. There are people who have a personal interest in cancer, so they may be a survivor, they may have been a caregiver, they may just be somebody who recognizes that there's a lot you can do to prevent cancer. But they are full voting members. So keep in mind that when you are preparing your application, in particular the sections, your general audience summary, that you really need to keep in your head that the other folks who are reading it are not nurse scientists. Now, they do not evaluate the science, but they're pretty smart. If you know anything about getting a cancer diagnosis, you learn a lot quickly. And so they will weigh in on whether something seems like an important topic or whether something doesn't seem feasible. Every application is assigned to 2 reviewers plus 1 stakeholder. Everybody participates in the discussion and voting. And at the meeting, all the grants get a score, and they are ranked from best to worst, and an application has to really get an outstanding or a high excellent score in order to be funded. So I always tell people it's a really competitive process. It's character building. Do not be discouraged if you're advised to revise and resubmit. This is probably going to be your entire career in cancer research. But I can tell you that last year, the first and second ranked applications were from people who resubmitted. So being told to revise and resubmit is not a bad thing. It means you come back with a very strong proposal. And also, people always want to know how many applications we're funding. That's really not the important question. If you want funding, you need to apply. Your best chance of getting funded is to follow the guidelines to a T and ask for clarification if you need to. We hope that we can get all of the approved grants funded. There's no target or set aside in the budget. And our funding percentage is pretty high as compared with the committees that are reviewing, for example, our $720,000 project grants. So last year we received 20 applications, and we funded about 55% of them, so it was 12. And about 20 is about the number we've been getting. It's varied somewhat, and right in the vicinity of between 50 and 60%, I'd say, is where we're funding. So if you know anything about NIH pay lines, that's pretty good. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way. Okay, and I know this is way down the line for you, but when you apply, you will get a letter telling you where your application stands, and that's between the peer review committee meeting and the council meeting, and then you will get blinded critiques from the 2 reviewers, so you will understand where your evaluators felt you could improve, or that your application is as good as it's going to get. And then if you wish to speak with me, particularly if you're not funded in your first try, you'll have the opportunity to set up a call, and we'll walk through all that. All right. So we're going to open the phone lines to see if there's any questions thus far about the ins and outs of the application content. And so I'll give you a moment to think if there's something.
There was a question at the from J.M. Stevens about.
Yeah. Thanks. I just noticed that.
Clarify what the meaning of that is.
Sure. Thanks, Stella. So in noting career advancement, they want to see that maybe you started out as a BSN, became an oncology certified nurse, and took a position perhaps in an oncology department, and then maybe became a supervisor. Yeah, I mean that's just sort of a made-up thing. But the reviewers are going to be looking to see how you've advanced in your career. Does that make sense, J.M. Stevens, number 2? Oh, J.M. Stevens is typing. You should be able to talk because the lines are open. Okay, great. Any other questions? And we'll have another Q&A at the end, so don't feel you need to jump in right this second. Stella, did you want to talk a little bit about the things that that when you process the applications and have to follow up with people that maybe they can avoid doing?
Yes. So when the applications, excuse me, when the applications come in and I'm reviewing all the applications, I seem to find there are certain things that are repeated that people are doing. One of them, the address, and I think sometimes the applicant is not filling out the address, or I don't know, like on the cover page. So we want sometimes the address comes in as the sponsored office address or whatever. So when the person gets awarded, when we mail out the award packet, either they're not receiving their award packet or it comes back to us. So we just want to make sure you're putting the correct address. So we want the address for your institution, and then on another page it asks for your preferred address while you're in school. So we want the address where you know you're going to be able to receive mail. So just make sure that you put that address, so that way when we should you get funded, we want to make sure that you get, your award packet or any other mail that we send you. A lot of times we will send it by email, but the award packet we are, sending by mail because it has the official award letter. And also
I'm sorry, Stella, before you move on, let me just tell people that on page 3.1, the instructions say we ask for the preferred mailing address, and then in underline it says, which should be consistent with the address shown on the application cover page. So the application cover page may confuse people because it says applicant's current institution. That's where you're going to school, not where you're working, okay? And then the mailing address is not the mailing address of the institution. It is your mailing address, and there is space below for the address of the institution and the address of the signing official and all those things. So sometimes sponsor projects offices, get their underwear in a wad over that sort of stuff. So that's what we're intending there. Keep going, Stella.
Okay. So also the date. For some reason, I get a couple people that change the date of the term. So when Shannon goes over how to, fill out the parts of the application, that part is already set in. It's already, it's a default. So you don't have to change anything. The date is set. So I know sometimes people may say, well, I only need a year or whatever. So with that part, if you're only receiving 1 year, then you need to provide written verification that you're, if you know for sure you're going to graduate after the first year, you need to send us written verification. It could be an email. It doesn't have to be like a, standard letter or anything. It just has to be something in writing that says that I know for sure I'm going to graduate the next May or June or whatever, so I only need 1 year. And then the budget, for some reason, people change the amount of the budget. That's set. That's also a default. You don't have to change that either. So I will be, if the application comes in and it has anything on it, I will send you an email. And that kind of delays your application getting processed, so just make sure everything is correct. If you have any questions, you can always call me or email me. And then with the signatures, so it requires, just on the cover page, you need the applicant's signature, faculty advisor's signature, department head signature, and a signing official's signature. And sometimes I get the application, it doesn't have their signatures missing. So any parts of the application that is not complete, it means that we can't process it. So it delays your application getting processed. And we have deadlines, we have to have everything in on time. So I have to, email you and say, hey, can you get this in? So just make sure, like I said, if you have questions or if there's a delay, like if you're sending it to someone to get their signature, just let us know it's going to take a while, and then we can give you the extension because it is due by October 15th deadline. So you can get an extension and let us know, hey, I need a few more days, and then we'll let our grants application specialist know. So it won't penalize you or whatever.
That's only in the case of a real emergency.
And I think Ginger kind of went over this part about the distance learning. If you could just put the percent, if it's blended or if you're, or not on campus, just put the percentage, because it's on my checklist. When I check, there's certain things I check off. So I need to have clarity. So I'm checking off the right thing. And then also, like she said on this page, 3.1, it asks for please provide your preferred mailing address. So I believe those are all the things that I'm running into that seems to be giving people problems. But like I said, if you, the timeline, it's a table, and sometimes people, I'm not sure, I think I've had people say they couldn't, for some reason they're like changing the format. So please don't do that. Just type, you should be able to put your cursor into the columns and type in it, and it should, you should be able to type in whatever you need. So please don't manipulate it or change it. If you have, like I said, if you're having problems, just call us, email us, we can help you. And I believe that is all. I think that's it. So if anybody has any questions about that, and Shannon's going to go over the application, the different parts and how to get it uploaded in Proposal Central.
Okay, so Shannon's going to be now sharing her screen. Stella, share my screen is showing up on my screen, but not Shannon's.
Oh, here's.
Oh, wait, there it is. Never mind. While Shannon's opening up, so she's going to take you into Proposal Central, I'll just also mention that you can adjust the template to some degree. So if you have less information to provide about volunteer activities and more to provide about continuing education, it's okay to adjust those things. Is it coming up? Nope. Hold on, troops.
While we're waiting, I meant to go over the roll call earlier. I was having some difficulties. Christine, I have two Christines. What is your last name? You can come off mute and tell me.
Stella, Christine typed it in the chat box, and the rest of you, we're waiting for some software update. The other thing I was going to mention is that most of the forms are portrait. A few of them are landscape, and please try to keep them in that format because it really compresses the information if you change a landscape document to a portrait. And also I was going to mention that when you go, if you haven't yet gone to cancer.org to download the policies and instructions, when you go there, you'll notice there's also a sample application. So you're going to be completing templates online, downloading forms, completing them, and uploading them back. We've created a blank application with all those templates so that you can see essentially what your final product is going to be. There's nothing written on it, so it's not going to help you with the content, but at least you'll be able to see the organization. And Proposal Central is very smart, and it actually pulls everything together and magically turns it into an application, which Shannon is about ready to show you, it looks like.
Okay, great. This is Shannon, and I'm going to show you just some basic information or show you how to use Proposal Central. So basically, you're going to get a grant opportunity. Some of you might already created an account and have done this. Basically, you're going to filter by the grant maker, and you're going to go down to the American Cancer Society. You will scroll down to the doctoral degree, Scholarship in Cancer Nursing, and you're going to click on Apply Now. So this pulls up the first page of the application. It's the title page. You would want to enter your project right here, and then you would select the program office, which would be number 6, Health Professional Training Grants. As Stella mentioned, everything is pre-filled, the start and end date, as well as the dollar figure. You will scroll down, and there's a proposal type, and if it's a resubmission, you would select that. If it's new, you would select that it's new. And the next question is resubmission. So you would put no if you're a new applicant. For the peer review committee code, go ahead and put in SCN. It's a required field, so just put that in there. Everything with a red asterisk is a required field, so I'll try to point that out as I do that. So since this is not a resubmission, you would click on not applicable, and then you want to click on yes that you read scientific misconduct, and you can click on this link and it opens it up. So you'll want to click yes before you submit, or it will not allow you to submit. So in order to go to the next section, which would be download templates, you'll see that I can't. Well, what you have to do is you have to save your title page, and then it's going to allow you to get to the other sections. So here we go, download templates. These are the parts of the application, and you'll see how there's download table of contents, reply to previous review. If this is the first time you're applying, you would still download that template, but put N/A on it and then turn around and upload it. We'll talk about that when we get closer to that information. There's program plan part 1, and there's the program progression timeline, and you just go all the way through and you'll see all that information. So you'll want to download these on your computer and work on them offline, and then you will have to convert them into a PDF in order to upload them. The next section is enable other users to access the proposal. You can add anybody on here. For example, if you want to add your dissertation chair or somebody like that, you can give them, you can type in their information and give the role, and then you can give them editing rights, or if you just want them to have viewing rights, you can do that as well. You will be the administrator of your application online. The next section is the Applicant Pi Section. And this is what you fill out when you create a profile, and it pulls that information in. So you'll see how it pulled in the institution information, because that's what I put in the profile. You'll also see that it happens to say 4040 Apple Street. What I want to show you is you scroll back up and click on Edit Professional Profile. You will put the institution in there. You'll select the institution. You'll put graduate student as a position title. Not all of these are required. And you're going to want here, this is where you want to put your preferred mailing address. So it's in your professional profile, and it's under institution and contact information. And I'll show you at the end how it pulls it in, but also how, if you're at the University of Minnesota, how it will list that on the cover page as well. But I just wanted to point that out. So in order to get back to the application, you are going to want to return to the LOI or proposal. So you click on that button, and you see most of my information has shown up. You do need to scroll down and add your license number, your RN license number, and what state you were licensed in. You will need to put that information in there, and then you would just click, save. Before going to the next section, just click on save every time. The next section is institutions and contact people, and that is actually filled out by your Office of Sponsored Programs or your grant office. So when you go in, you've selected the institution in your professional profile, and you will scroll down and you will see the different contact people for this particular institution. And then from the list, you will select the signing official and the dean's name and the department head and your faculty advisor dissertation chair. And how you do that is you would just put that information in there. You'll see that all of it says signing official. What you would do here is you would put in, for example, Ginger's email address here, and you click add. And then what you would do is you would scroll down. So just make sure all the information is filled out. You click on the Save button, and then you choose her role. Well, her role is department head. So you do that, and you go down here and you click on Save. And it says my changes were saved. So I'm going to close that, and it will show you just a moment, or it's supposed to show you in just a moment. And let's see here. This could possibly be a technical difficulty, or it could be me. So anyways, what happens is it will add Ginger as your department head. So if the institution signing official isn't correct, or you don't know who it is, that's where you would have to get in touch with the Office of Sponsored Programs. It's a possibility that there's a signing official in the School of Nursing, or there might be a different signing official for your area, and so they would need to add that. You cannot go in there and add that. So it's good to get in touch with the Office of Sponsored Programs as soon as possible, and my recommendation would be to go ahead and start trying to fill out this section and see what gets pulled up, and then if it's not the right information in regards to the signing official or where the check should be sent, then you definitely want to get in touch with them. Again, you can add the other people, the dean, the department head, etc. So I just want to mention that. The next section is letters of recommendation, and you're going to put the person, your recommender's email address in here twice, and you'll see that I did this, and then you're going to click the add button, and you'll say send email. So I would send the email to that person. I'll just go ahead and do it. And you close that window, and it will show you that it was sent to Kristen, and the date that it was sent, and that, she hasn't started it. So if you come back here, I don't know, 2 weeks after you ask them, or a week really, and you see that they haven't started it, go ahead and send them the email again, but I'd also probably call them or send them an email from your personal address as well. These letters must be uploaded or submitted by your recommender by 5 p.m. on October 15. Otherwise, the system will not allow you to submit your application. So I would start sooner than later on sending information to your recommenders. And again, that would not be, Ginger and Stella had mentioned who that would be, like, for example, Ginger said, not your best friend, people who can speak to your studies, the work you've done, etc. So after that, we will move on to general and technical abstract and project coding. So you see the general audience summary. This is where you would put that there. And Ginger described basically how to fill that out.
Well, there's an example in the materials as well. And what I had mentioned was that this is for a non-scientific audience, like a stakeholder, and potentially a donor. So if a donor is interested in funding a scholarship, this would be the thing that they would see. So you need to write something that is understandable to that audience.
Okay, great. And so you would move down to the structured technical abstract. Plan A, as Ginger mentioned, you will not have a structured abstract at that point, so you would want to put in /A. Now, if you are Plan B, then you will need to fill it out. So let's just pretend you're Plan A. And then the next section is used for statistical purposes only, and we collect this kind of information to share with the public. So Ginger will go over, let's see, the childhood as well as the areas of research and cancer types.
You know, the first one is pretty self-explanatory. If you're working in the area of childhood or adolescent cancer, you put 100%. And if you're doing some work in that area, you estimate a percentage. And if you're doing only adult, then you would put 0. And then the next section is where we ask you to classify your research for us. There's something called the Common Scientific Outline, which is developed by an international consortium. And what they're really trying to do is surveillance of cancer research being done around the world and maybe gaps. And so you don't need to review this online. Again, this outline is included in the grant material, so take a look at it, find the area that reflects best on your research, and there's examples given, and then select 2 areas to go into that field. And then there's one more classification of cancer research areas by site. And so if your research is focused on a specific cancer site or sites, you would choose them. If it's not focused on a particular cancer, then you can choose non-site specific cancer. Back to you, Shannon.
Okay, great. One thing that I wanted to mention, I'm going to scroll back up to the childhood cancer, and I'm going to point something out. It says enter a number. For example, for 50%, enter 50, not 50% or 0.5. So please don't put the percent sign in there, or 0.5, for example. That kind of slows down the processing of your application. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. And also, you will notice that you have to equal 100% for each of these. So if you just have areas of research and there's 2, you know, it could be 20, 80%, whichever, and you would say that it just needs to equal 100. And same with the cancer type. So if it's non-site specific cancer, you would put 100%. If it's breast cancer and another kind of cancer, then, you know, you could split that 50-50, or you could, you know, 20-80, however, whatever you select that you think is best. And then just go ahead and click the Save button. And the next section that we are going to go to is assurances and certification. When you create your profile in the institution, they'll have that file number. You're not going to see it on this page in particular, but what you will want to do is, you know, whether or not you have human subjects, let's just say you don't, then you would put not applicable, and you would go on to the next section, which is vertebrate animals, and same story. If it does have it proposed, it's a yes. You would check whether it was approved or pending or exempt, etc. So in general, IRB committees will not look at an application until they know they're funded, and then that's when you would go through the process. So a lot of people will pick pending. And for the date, I would put just a guesstimation. You might not know the exact date, but I would put a future date. And then what will happen is, if you're awarded the grant, you will get an activation form that you will need to fill out. And on there, it does ask for the number. And so you would have to put that information in, and then we could start funding you. If you don't have that yet and you're still waiting for it, then, once you get the approval, then the money will be released. So the next section is proposal attachments. I had mentioned how you download each template, and you save it to your computer, you work on it. Well, you need to convert it into a PDF. So, so what you will do is you will scroll down. Let's see here. So you're going to attach a file. You'll click there. And then it's going to give you an option of attachment type. So you can upload them at any time. If you get your biographical information from your faculty advisor, go ahead and upload it, but you're still waiting on program plan part 2, that's fine. Just all of these have to be uploaded. They are required, except for the prior critiques. If it's a new application, that's not a required field, so do not worry about that. So you'll go ahead and select each attachment type. Just make sure that if you're putting a letter of support from your local mentor, that is actually what you do upload, because when you go to print the application, it's going to print out in the correct order. So we do not start shuffling those papers once it prints. It prints out in the correct order that it needs to. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you would just, pick a file, click here to browse, upload, and continue. And then you would do that for all of those sections. And then we will go back. And the PI data sheet, that's where it pulls in the information that you have filled out. So you will just scroll down. You'll see I didn't put my date of birth, so I'd have to click on Edit Professional Profile and go in there and put my date of birth. You do have to select the citizenship in what country. And let's see. You do not need to put your Social Security number in there, so I just want to mention.
Please don't.
Yeah, please don't put your Social Security information, but let's go ahead and click on the
We
edit.
welcome as much demographic information as you're willing to provide.
Right.
Not your Social Security number.
So I just went back to my professional profile to look at it. And so what you would do is you would go down to personal data. This is personal data of application. You will have to go there and put in your date of birth. And you do not need to put your place of birth, hometown. The gender identity is something that's optional. You do not have to put that. We just collect this information for statistical purposes to share with the public demographics in regards to the grants that are funded. So again, this information you do not need to fill out. It'd be great if you did, but you don't have to. And you're going to scroll down further. You do need to select your citizenship status, and then what country that you're a citizen of, and United States. If you are a permanent non-citizen, non-U.S. citizen, then you would put your permanent residency. That's what you would select, and then you would select what country that you're from. And do not put your visa type information, your social, your passport. Please do not do any of that. There is something on here called the Orchid Id. That is something that's optional. If you have created an Orchid Id, then you are welcome to put that there. It's a place where you would enter all kinds of information, publications if you have them, etc. This might be something that you would fill out in the future. And scrolling back up. So we've pretty much done everything in the professional profile. So I'm just going to click the Save button. Oh, I need to put my birthday in there. Hold on. Just so you can see it. I'm making this up, sort of. Anyway, so you're going to click on the Save button, and I'll show you what will happen. So now I want to go back to my proposal. I click on that button, and you'll see we're at the PI data sheet. Now my birthday shows up because I went into my professional profile, edited it, and added it. So that covers that section. The next section is Validate. Now this is an important button because it's going to tell you what is missing from your application if there is anything. So you would click on the Validate button, and you'll see how I'm missing all kinds of information. Well, these are required fields. So in order for me to be able to submit my application, I've got to make sure everything's filled out. So I'd go through here and be like, oh my goodness, I didn't put any of my attachments on. Then you would click on Missing Attachments. It takes you there where you can upload your missing attachments. Okay, so I'm back over to Validate. And again, like if you filled everything out, it's going to be there and you can submit your application. So just look here for missing information. And the next section is Print Signature Pages. Now, if you decide to print your signature pages before you print out your application because your application is not ready to print out yet because you're still uploading information, you can do that. And the thing is that there's information that we would want you to fill out before you print the signature page. For example, it would be, I need to put my institution, I need to do my preferred mailing address. And if you look at the form, you'll see where I selected my institution, and it has, right here, it has all the information there. But now it says the applicant's current institution. Well, I am at the University of Minnesota. However, my home address is 4040 Apple Street, and we kind of went over that previously in the Edit Professional Profile. So, of course, if you have questions about this, you can let me know. And then you'll also see on the human subjects, you'll see where the university's number does pull up, but you can also click here. Let's just say you don't have any human subjects. You would click there. If you do, then you could type in the date there. I'm not exactly sure why it shows up that way, but you can do that. And as mentioned, these are the required signatures: yours, the department head, the signing official, and the signature of the faculty advisor. When you move on to the second page, you'll see the contact information. So you'll see I selected Ginger Kralik, and she is the department head, so her information would show up there. The deans would show up there if I had entered it, and anybody else that was pertinent to the application. You would see their information show up here. And the next page is the general audience summary, and you'll see that's all A's. And so that's how it's going to look. Obviously, you would have a paragraph, something that makes sense, and then you would scroll down. And I'm on Plan A. And so I didn't submit a structured technical abstract, but I did put NA, so you'll see how that prints out. So that's what the signature pages look like. So basically, when you're ready and you've everything's been validated and you want to print the whole application, you would click here. Again, it shows you the cover page, it shows you the contact page, it shows the general audience summary, as well as the technical abstract. And then after that, all the attachments that you upload, all the application sections that are PDFs, they will print out after this, after the technical abstract, and they will be in the correct order. So please don't shuffle the papers. Just keep it in the same order. That would be very helpful for us. And let's see, I guess that is, you click on the Submit button. And so you'll get, once you hit the Submit button, you will get an email letting you know that your application was in fact submitted. So I'm going to click on the Submit button. Look, it won't let me because I didn't fill out everything in the application. So then you have to go back in and click on these different areas and fill out the information and then submit it. And if you miss something, it's going to show up right here in the Submit button, but it also shows up in the Validate button. So you really do want to use that Validate button when you're going through the whole process. So that pretty much covers everything with Proposal Central. If you have any questions you can ask them now, but also if you're going through and you start to fill out your application and Proposal Central is confusing, please give me a call. I believe it's on a slide coming up, but I will just say it anyways. It is 404-329-7605. And you can also email me, which should be on the slide, and it's shannon.pear@cancer.org. Anyways, okay, so there's one question, and hold on. Let's see here. Okay, so the mailed signature page. We do accept electronic signatures. That's fine. We do not need an original. So electronic signatures are fine. If you get somebody to sign it and you have to scan it and send it over to the dean, then they can sign it and scan it and turn it. Basically, however you can get the signatures on there, that's fine with us. It does not need to be original. And I think that about wraps up.
So one other thing, Shannon, that comes up as well with once we get all the applications in, and mind you, we get hundreds of applications, there's other programs. So sometimes people forget to hit submit, like after they may be missing something and they go back in. Please make sure you hit submit. Sometimes we get the paper copy, but it's not in your application is not in our system. And sometimes we get the application in our system, but we don't get the paper copy. So please make sure you send both. That's another thing. Some people think they're only supposed to submit one or the other, not both. So make sure you send both. We want the electronic and the paper copy.
Shannon, can you answer the question from Shazia?
I just did.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So again, you do not need original signatures. However, you get it on there is awesome with us. We don't care, and they don't have to be original. Just please get the signatures on there. And I think that might be all of the information or questions about Proposal Central. Again, I am free to talk to you anytime and happy to walk you through it. Just contact me.
If you've been to cancer.org before, the whole research section has been updated and it's a lot easier. There's now a button that says apply for a grant, so it should be simpler to find things. If you've ever been to Proposal Central before, the web site URL has changed and you should be redirected, but Altum has dropped out of it, so you may want to change your bookmarks. And keep in mind that I have never applied for a nursing scholarship. So there are other people you should talk to, people who've done this and been successful. Certainly make sure you and your advisor are working together closely, and don't hesitate to ask us if you have any questions. And we can tell you who else has been funded if that information isn't readily available. There's Shannon's email address and number. All the contacts for Proposal Central. You'll find all that on Proposal Central. There's also a lot of helpful videos there. We have to wait for the webinar recording along with the deck to be provided to us, but as soon as it is, you can get with Charlene. We haven't yet been able to post that on our website, which is kind of ridiculous. And so as we're wrapping up, and I appreciate that you're hanging on with us, I apologize for the technical difficulties. If you can, please let us maybe type in the chat box where you heard about the scholarship and about the webinar, and I'll just do a little bit of inspirational talking. One of the grant programs we have is our Professors Program, and these are for really top-notch people in the field. Some of them go on and get Nobel Prizes. If you don't know who Chris Myskowski is, she's a pretty renowned cancer nurse scientist who works in the area of symptom management, but also incorporates genetics into that. And what you don't know is that Chris is the only nurse scientist who is an American Cancer Society clinical research professor. She got there without a DSCN grant, but you can get one, so you should go for it, and maybe someday we'll have a few more nurse scientists in our portfolio. And just to remind you that we're all on the same page, and I hope that we do get applications from each of you, and I hope this was helpful today. Thank you so much for joining us.